I just wanted to mention briefly that the U.S. Food Sovereignty Prize being given to my organization, or our organization in Washington State, is one of the proudest moments of my life. There's another one I want to mention, but that is actually a sovereignty prize being given. It's like a protest prize or a statement that we're making to the world because of the World Food Prize that's being given. And I actually traveled to Des Moines, Iowa, and the same day that the World Food Prize was being given, I was in a room full of Iowan family farmers and other food sovereignty leaders from across the country and the world as we were gathering to recognize the importance of our movement and what a wrong direction the world food system is going, and how the corporate food regime is actually taking so much political control of our lives from the bottom all the way, actually from the top and coming all the way to the bottom. So it's really, it's a proud moment for me. The other proud moment was the day that we actually signed the first union contract in the state of Washington in 1995 for farm workers in the eastern part of the state working at Chateau Ste. Michelle Columbia Crest Winery. So I want to make sure, and every time I speak I try to mention, that everybody should drink that wine. That wine is union from stem to cork. The Teamsters are in the winery, and the farm workers have one of the best contracts in the nation under the United Farm Workers of America at that winery in eastern Washington with over 12,000 acres of wine grape. So drink it. It always tasted good, but now it's better. It's social justice wine. So, you know, when we were organizing in Washington State for Chateau Ste. Michelle Columbia Crest, there was a small independent farm worker union there in eastern Washington called the United Farm Workers of Washington State that was actually formed after Cesar Chavez came to Washington State to support the farm workers who were organizing in the hops, in the apple industry during, I believe, the early 80s. And the farm workers asked for the support of the United Farm Workers of America, and Cesar said that they were overwhelmed with keeping the union alive and moving forward with all the boycotts and all the organizing that was going on in California, that they would have to try to build their own leadership and their own movement in Washington State, and that independent union was formed. And I bring that up because I have been working in the fields. I have worked in the fields starting at the age of 10 in Washington State. My father started working in the fields at the age of 10 in Texas, and then spent his entire life a migrant farm worker working the lands of this great country from upstate New York all the way across the country in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Wyoming, and almost every state that I can think of. He was a farm worker until the day he died he was 68 years old, and he died in 1994, 1 year before we signed the Chateau Ste. Michelle contract. So standing before you is a multi-generational farm worker of the United States of America who didn't learn the history of our people as as Mexican Americans, as farm workers in the United States until I was middle-aged. And you cannot imagine the rage I felt after joining the Rainbow Coalition and having Rainbow organizers show me the structural system that had been built in this country politically and socially to contain our people as this cheap labor force for the food system. That my father, who I loved very much and respected, that we have been poor, not because we couldn't do better, but because there is an intentional effort being made to have a poor population working to keep the agricultural industry rich and powerful in this country. And it was at that moment that I realized that something has to change, similar to the Immokalee workers, when they realized that things have gotten so bad that you have to do something. And so I want to mention this because we're in Washington, D.C. I don't get here very often. In this place that you are in, and the professions that you have and the work that you do is important to farm workers all over the country for many reasons. But let me read something to you. that Cesar Chavez said in 1967. He said, "Have you ever considered land, a lot of land, a lot of free water, and a lot of cheap labor? Have you ever considered what this combination can do and is doing in the West? Because of the combination of these three elements, there are growers in California and the western part of this country that are not only rich, but are very powerful. These are the growers. These are the people that control and have a say in what legislation is going to be enacted or not going to be enacted, especially when it deals with agriculture and farm labor. So when you think about your food that you eat and every worker up and down the food chain that produces that food, think about what happens in this nation, because from the minutest piece of language that is written into legislation all the way up to the Farm Bill, the way the Department of USDA is structured, all of that is being done with purpose to ensure that there's profit being produced in the production of food. And as a farm worker, with my family and all of the members of the newly formed independent union, Familias Unidas por la Justicia in Skagit County, we are the recipients of every kind of pressure and oppression that is going to come from that legislation to enable the food industry to make a profit in the production of food, both here and all over the world. So when you think about the production of food, and you mentioned the tomato fields, imagine what it's like for a farm worker family to stand in a field of thousands of acres of whatever that may be, whether it's wine grape or tomatoes, and you see this vast expanse of rows and rows of whatever that may be. The acres of industrial mono-agricultural production, of which we are the key components of making sure that whoever owns that land or that production system makes a profit. And there have been institutionalized wage systems set up to ensure that we earn as less as possible. In all of the systems in states across this country that are supposed to protect us from workplace injuries, keep us safe from pesticides and chemicals, have been restructured, or actually not restructured, but have continuously been structured to ensure that we have as little access as possible, and if we do get access, that we get as little as possible benefit from whatever system is produced. In Washington State, and I think across many states, there's this thing called piece rate wage process, which is legalized wage theft, in my opinion, and in many farm workers' opinions. At the farm that we are currently boycotting, Sakuma Brothers Berry Farms, before the strike of last year, over 400 workers that went on strike, every single day, the farm workers would go to work and they would not know how much they were going to get paid until they got to the field and the supervisor told them. Imagine what kind of job that is, where every day you get up, you get ready to go, you're going to work 12 to 14 hours, and you don't know what you're going to get paid or how much you're going to earn that day. And the supervisor decides how much, what price per pound you're going to pick that day. And so this piece rate wage process has got to be changed. It has got to be made illegal, and farm workers should be earning an hourly wage. In our opinion, as farm workers, we estimate the beginning wage rate for a farm worker per hour should be $25 an hour, as it should be for family farmers. Because we believe that the food in this country is priced too low. It is priced low so that people will buy it, but that ensures our poverty. Multi-generational poverty in rural America all across this country for farm workers and for family farmers so that consumers can buy cheap food. And when it doesn't get cheap enough, then they go and they find slave labor in other parts of the world. So when you're talking about farm workers today, and yes, I review Cesar Chavez's words all the time in the farm worker movement that was so promising for all of us for so long. And we revere him, and we know that the movement is not over. Brothers and sisters, You who are working here in Washington, D.C. have to know that things are not better for farm workers. There are victories here and there where farm workers have the courage to stand up at much sacrifice. It is worse for farm workers. And I know, when I can say that when I worked in the fields at the age of 15, my life was better in the fields than the farm workers I see in the fields today in my own Skagit County and in Washington State. I was never denied a break in Washington State in 1970. These farm workers at Sakuma Brothers Berry Farms went for years without any lunch breaks, any rest breaks. And some of them worked there longer than 15 years. So, as farm workers, we know that life is tough in the fields, that there's no protection, and there's no respect, and there's a lot of mistreatment. But it doesn't end there. It moves into the communities. It moves into the labor camps where we live with the farm workers. At Sakuma Brothers labor camps, they prepare their labor camps now for guest workers to replace the local farm workers and the families that have been working for them for over 15 years and help to expand this family farm to the largest corporate farm in Skagit County with over 1,500 acres. These labor camps are now prison camps with fences around them, private security guards with dogs patrolling the farm labor camp cabins, and a separate visiting area for family members of the farm workers living inside the labor camp. You're talking about slavery, it is real and we live it every day. The average lifespan of a farm worker today is still 49 years. And this is one of the reasons that the farm workers at Sakuma Berry Farms are boycotting the berries of Sakuma Berry Farms and Driscoll label, because they are picking into the Driscoll boxes. So I want to ask you all that this is one way that in America today you can support farm worker rights, is by not spending your money on products that you know are openly exploiting farm workers, and that where farm workers are taking the stand. So don't buy Driscoll berries, and do not buy any product that says Sakuma Berry Farms, and support the farm workers called Familias Unidas por la Justicia in Washington State. Thank you very much.